When he turned his back from shoulder to shoulder, it looked like as wide as the tailgate of a truck.
And just darkness, literal darkness, just came like all over, just all over me except where I was standing.
This thing let out the most blood-curdling, mind-blowing, spine-tingling scream that you've ever heard in your life, and it cut through me like a knife.
And I knew that they were going to take me. I just knew it. And then the next thing I can remember is being levitated.
Well, when I look in there, I see two big eyes staring back at me.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Bump Podcast, a place for the believers of the unexplained, monsters, and paranormal. Join us, and we'll go face to face with what goes bump in the night.
Hey there, believers. I got a good episode for you today. On the first episode of season 3, first episode to be recorded in 2022. Today I'm bringing on Andy Mcgrath. Hold on a second. I had an update pop up on my computer. It had to reboot. We have Andy Mcgrath coming on from Beasts of Britain. He has a very popular social media presence. He's written a book. He has a podcast. He's out there doing it all. Okay, holding down Great Britain on their cryptid community, and I'm really excited to have him on. I know I might not sound that excited, but I've been battling a virus of some sort for about a week, and it's rough. I ain't gonna lie. It's rough, but the show must go on, right? I'm out of banked up episodes, so instead of just laying low, we're gonna do the show through it. So if I sound like trash, I apologize. If there's a few pauses or coughs or whatever in here, just bear with me, all right? But I'll go ahead and bring Andy on, and let's get into the Beasts of Britain. This is cool.
So my name is Andy Mcgrath. I'm a British cryptozoology author, researcher, investigator. Haven't always been. In 2016, I got the idea to write a series of books about different beasts, unknown animals, cryptids around the world. And I started sensibly with my own country, and wrote Beasts of Britain. To explore the creatures that may or may not be hiding out within the British Isles. It was an interesting journey. I had been challenged by an American friend to prove that there was something more than just Nessie or Nessie legends lurking in the British Isles. And what I actually discovered was stories of Bigfoot, of all things, dogmen, sea serpents, as well as lake monsters, mystery big cats, little people, trolls, and more beyond. Since that journey, the book has grown, and the mission has grown, and I've now just finished volume 1 of Beasts of the World. The first volume dealing with different hairy humanoids around the world, one of 7 parts of different cryptids around the world. I'm just about to publish it, hopefully at the end of this month, and here we are, getting ready for a new adventure in cryptozoology.
That's fantastic. See, that already throws me for a loop. I didn't realize that there were so many cryptids in the British Isles. I know of a couple of sea serpent kind of folklore or whatever, and I've heard about the little people. But yeah, I wasn't familiar with the larger kind of cryptids.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a whole British Bigfoot tradition here as well, which some researchers try to pull back to the green man or the woodwoes tales from Europe. So if you go around the cathedrals, or look at noble heraldry from the 10th, 11th, 12th century in Britain, so the British Isles, you'll find these hairy, upright men called the woodwoes, or the green men in some cases, that are adorning all of our noble places, our holy buildings. They're dotted all over cathedrals everywhere, hundreds and hundreds of years old. So a lot of researchers look back and say, well, look at that. This is a sort of a proof that people were seeing animals like this, or let's say creatures like this, way back when, in the Middle Ages, now in the medieval period. But for me personally, I'm more perplexed by the modern day reports of British Bigfoot, of which there seem to be many, really many. There are a few collectors of these reports in the UK, far too few, unfortunately, but there seem to be conservatively a couple of hundred reports. Let's say 20 or 30 of those look very reasonable, as far as reports are concerned, descriptions, etc., without Bigfoot on the brain and other issues like that. Could there be something like a British Bigfoot in the UK? I don't know, but it does intrigue me, and in the book I actually wrote a whole section about it, even to look at as well as a few sightings, even to look at the possibilities of what could indicate that they're here. So, for example, could they be a derivative or some sort of extant Neanderthal still living on, hidden in the country? How would they have got here? This is an island. And then we looked into things like the Doggerland Bridge that used to exist between Europe and Britain, which was possibly submerged about 6,000 years ago, and the waters out of which they've dredged up and trawled up many tools and skeletons and mammoths and all kinds of other bones and indicators of a landmass that was once occupied there. And it's fascinating to me, as well as we mentioned earlier, looking at the holy history, the pomp and the pageantry of how these creatures might have been represented in the past.
Right. That's interesting that they would have them on cathedrals and religious landmarks and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It must have been revered pretty highly.
Yeah, I mean, there's another possible theory as to why they're there, because it also occurs throughout Europe. This whole woodwoes or woodwaza, as it's known in Europe, this wild man emblems. There we find them in churches and cathedrals in France and Germany and everywhere else, Spain as well. There was a great book that I read actually when I was studying in university called Religion and the Decline of Magic. And what this book talked about essentially was how many of the pagan festivals and gods and goddesses and the holy well of this or the sacred rock of that were as late as the 15th and 16th centuries were taken over by the church, and they had saints' names put on them, or they had Christian festivals. Christmas is a great example of that, right? The festival of Yule, this midwinter festival that was very popular. Easter's another one. I mean, yes, Jesus was crucified around about the same time as Easter or the Passover, and similar and close to the Roman festival of Easter. Yet Easter is the festival of Astarte, the festival of rebirth and paganism, and that's so we're basically taking over some of these things. So my theory had been for a while that perhaps some derivation of these pagan gods, this hairy man, maybe similar to Heracles, the club wielding Heracles, or Sylvanus from the Greek mythology, this sort of shepherding god, this guardian of the forest of the animals, had been amalgamated into the church, this representation, to make it a holy thing, a Christian thing, instead of a pagan thing. And then later it became popular, with
Right.
nobles and royals as this strong emblem of nature.
Let's see. I was thinking that it might have been a depiction of Esau. And I was wondering, why would Esau be so popular that he would be on structures and stuff, But
Exactly.
yeah, that's
Exactly.
pretty
There
wild.
are similar things like that. He was really just said to be very, very hairy, and that has been a bit overblown with Esau a bit. But there's Enkidu,
Enkidu,
sorry,
yeah.
in the Babylonian mysteries. A lot of these gods and deities and characters, they are passed down through empires mainly. So that's why you can see them in the Babylonians, the Egyptians, and the Greeks, the Persians, all these different things. Romans right down to us, who are essentially disseminated or also inculcated that Roman pagan tradition into our own traditions. They're you often find that they're related. So that's why I say people like Heracles or Sylvanus would have had imagery or a similar personage in Celtic and
Right.
Brythonic pagan lore that would have probably been based upon the same ancient character,
Yeah,
but
I think you're right.
translated into their own,
Yeah,
their own
I think
myths and yeah.
I think all of it's real. I think they're all connected. They're all related.
Absolutely, yeah.
It all goes back to
Absolutely.
one story, and everybody just took it their own versions of.
Exactly that. Yeah, no, exactly that.
Yeah. Awesome, man. I appreciate that. Well, I want to get back into Bigfoot here in a little bit.
Yeah,
Because that's a big topic,
that's a big topic. Yeah. Such a treacherous, difficult, huge topic.
It goes everywhere from being in the Bible to or Gilgamesh all the way up to UFOs. There's nowhere to put Bigfoot that he don't fit in. But you mentioned something else that sparked my interest was stories about the little people.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I am fascinated by the little people. If you don't mind talking about that a little bit.
I don't know. This is the amazing thing about this to me is that, okay, in looking at this, I've discovered so many links all over the world. So that those tales have definitely persisted for centuries.
Yes.
Throughout the British Isles, and as you may or may not know, you're probably aware, throughout the British Isles we have the Scots and the English and the Welsh and the Cornish and the Irish, and even within those countries, there's many different tribes that have sort of been ingratiated in over time, and yet still have a slightly different version of these things. All of them have tales of things like fairies and elves, gnomes, brownies, imps, hobgoblins, pixies, spookus, knockers, fenedri, uris, grugachs, bubachs, trows, and they're all, not all, but many of them are very diminutive, troll-like, hairy little folk. And the thing I was most interested in when I was looking at the British Isles, apart from the obvious modern-day sightings, is could some of these beings that were like gnomes, for instance, that were seen or observed in the ancient past, could they have been diminutive primates or even pygmy peoples, like the Trows or the Menehune or the Holder folk, or even perhaps even more something like the Ebugogo of Flores were described like a pygmy type of people, were perhaps not so developed, lived alongside the larger people. Could it be something like that, or a small primate, as you often hear described in Australia with the Junjidi, or the Junjari, whether there's one of the myriad ways that they pronounce it. Are we looking at that here in the UK as well? And are these creatures now maybe functionally extinct? Essentially, they're not at replacement levels, but they are occasionally seen,
right,
in all parts of the world, as in the UK as well. And it was an interesting thing. In going searching for these creatures, actually, I found very, very few bona fide modern day sightings. And within that, some of what was described could have been diminutive or a juvenile Bigfoot types, if such a thing exists. But I did find a few, like a few interesting sightings. There was one in 2018, a claim sighting in a place called Arrington Woods, where a dog walker was. And this is in a village called Newmask in England, and a dog walker was walking on New Year's Day, January 2018, and heard some kind of chattering, like she described them as ape-like, almost ape-like noises, like two people muttering to each other. And she looked into the trees with the direction the sounds were coming from and saw two creatures stood near a felled tree, 3 feet tall, covered in tawny coloured hair, both males. She claimed she saw the anatomy of one of them. Said they looked like primitive humans, and one was wearing a loincloth. She tried to get the camera out. They also mentioned they had that sort of a mane of hair down their necks. They were muscular, but she tried to get the camera out, and her dog barked. You know, it was always the same kind of story. Yeah. And they ran off into the woods, and she didn't get to take a picture. But this is a modern day thing. This is something that still seems, if the witnesses are to be believed, to take place even now in this country. And if there is anything to those old ancient legends, then it would make sense that they do.
Yeah, it does make sense. Hey, that's super modern. That's 4 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, then there's other stuff. You know, there's other stuff as well. There was a great one in a place called Woodford Bridge, Love Lane and Woodford Bridge in London, which is, I mean, there's a lot of leafy areas of London, by the way, so it's not the most urban area of London, but still, you know, it's a residential area, and there was an old lady just come out of a flat, turned the corner when she saw a hairy creature, 4 feet tall, with really big feet, that looked at her with animal eyes, just pass her and leap over the wall into a public house called the Three Jolly Willies pub, and this was at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. Wow. She just walking around the corner, just some old bird, and then suddenly she's confronted by a 4-foot hairy creature, not an ape, according to her, right, or some escapee. And of course, any such creatures in this country are closely monitored. If there was a missing chimp or a gibbon or something, we'd know about it. Everybody would know about it.
Well, yeah, that leads me to this, because you nailed it while you were talking. I was thinking there's probably not a whole lot of territory that hasn't been mapped in detail over there, right? Like it's not like America where there's, or even in my state in West Virginia, there's miles and miles that nobody goes to. Like there's places that no one has went to in years.
Yeah.
I just imagine, I've never been over there, but I kind of picture it a little different. Like you guys probably have a more thorough grasp on your regions, right?
I would say yes. I mean, definitely in comparison to somewhere like the United States. I mean, I was even astonished whilst landing in Atlanta airport, just for some change. I think I had to connect there somewhere. I was astonished by the endless forest that I saw just stretching out to the horizon. I thought, this is around the airport. You know? Right. This is I'm not assuming we're in the woods here. This is just a bit of forest. Mm-hmm. And yet I can't see the end to it. So no, we don't have areas like that, but it's topographically, the UK it's very surprising. So I went looking for this information because, of course, when you talk about things like this, the first thing that comes back to you is always, well, you know, the UK is not really that big. There's 67 million people who live there. It doesn't have huge forests. So where are these creatures living? And I went searching for some evidence as to, could there be, if they do exist, could there be somewhere where they could hide? Excuse me. And what I found was something called the UK National Ecosystem Assessment, which was obviously taken, to look at the land we have and how it's being used, and is it healthy? Is there room? This was done in 2012, fair enough, but not a lot has changed since then. And what they actually was surprised to discover was that only 6.8% of the UK's entire land area could be classified as urban.
Wow.
Yeah, and within that, it's even that. By the way, that includes rural settlements and roads within that as well. And what they discovered within the four primary nations, like the UK, England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, is that in the nations themselves, it was even more dire. So England, which is the most populated nation of 54 million people, 10.6% of the land was urban. Scotland, 1.9% of the land was Scotland.
Right.
And let's say it's about 2/3 the size of England, something like that, or maybe slightly less than that. 3.6% of Northern Ireland, 4.1% of Wales, and in those smaller Celtic nations, I think Scotland's population is approximately 5 million, Wales 3.5, Northern Ireland 1.5 million people. So again, there's this situation where there's not a lot of people about.
Yeah.
It actually means that there's a whopping 93% of the UK combined that's not urban. And then they looked into the land itself. So they found that 54% of the land in the towns and cities was also green space, parks, allotments, football fields, railway sidings, and waterways.
Yeah.
So
there's plenty of places to hide.
Yeah, there is. And you find that a lot. Sorry to jump in here, but when you step outside, I live just on the edge of London. When you step outside for even, a mile, 2 miles, suddenly you're in the countryside, and British people are on the path kind of people. We don't have a lot of wild campers or many hunters.
Right.
We go for these walks in the countryside, and we go along these regulated paths and, places where it's easy to get back from.
Right.
I think there's room for something to hide. Doesn't mean it's there, but there is room.
I love it because I've watched some wild campers on YouTube because I know it's pretty strict out there about where you're allowed to camp and stuff.
Yeah.
I watch them and I think, how cool of a place would that be to go? Because you don't have to worry about large predators. You don't have to worry about bears and mountain lions and wolves. But I see something like what you're writing about, and you got Bigfoot and Dogman and all these fairy folk, and they're so safe. I mean, it's
if it is indeed more than urban folklore, modern folklore, as I like to call it sometimes, if it is more than that, because of course they're anecdotal sightings, they're not evidential, then I suppose. But then although people reported some harrowing encounters, there doesn't seem to be much harm being done. There is another phenomenon in the country which is quite concerning, which is the British big cats.
Yeah.
And those reports are within the thousands.
Really?
Within the thousands. And I must get a few every month, I'm sure. Somebody mentioned something about seeing a big cat very, very frequently. Now, this is something, it's not cryptozoology. I guess it's an out of place animal, really, isn't it? But it's something that's crazy, because it should really show you how things can get established or changed over a short period of time. So you may be aware that before 1976, anybody in the UK could own more or less whatever animal they wanted, and it was very popular to own status animals like big cats if you had a country estate. So normally things like pumas or melanistic leopards or jaguars were very, very popular.
Right.
And people got fed up. I think there were a few incidents, people weren't keeping them properly, and suddenly then in 1976 the British government introduced the Dangerous Wild Animals Act 1976 to regulate them. Now, what this resulted in really was very, very expensive conditions for pet owners. People weren't really keepers, but they were pet owners. Maybe this thing was just wandering around on their farm on a lead. And now you had things like Section 3 CNF of the Act required that any animal consumed at all times, if it's being kept only under the authority of the license, be held in accommodation which secures that the animal will not escape, suitable as regards construction, size, temperature, lighting, ventilation, drainage, cleanliness, and which is suitable for the number of animals proposed to be held in the accommodation. And also, while any animal concerned is at the premises, where it normally will be held. Its accommodation is such that it can take adequate exercise. What kind of enclosure do you need to have for a puma to take adequate exercise?
Right.
Something really severe. And this was introduced really without any thought as to what these people were going to do with these big cats. The zoos weren't offering to take them. Of course, for a zoo, actually, this is an expensive venture. They're not charities.
Right.
And many people, it's claimed at least, many people just let them go in the 1970s. And since that time, throughout the country, bit by bit by bit, reports started to increase of cubs as well as fully grown animals. And it would seem that we have a sizable big cat population. I don't know how many, maybe a few hundred, roaming the country after dark. Yeah.
Well, you'll have that. We have something similar down in Florida, around the Everglades.
Oh, yeah.
Giant snakes that have gotten out of control. Monkeys.
It's like the invasive species capital of the world. I love it.
Yeah. They're offering, money for people to come down in the summers and help wipe out iguanas and pythons.
Yeah.
Because it's just so overrun down there.
I mean, they're just such an adaptable animal, the python. Right. I mean, I've seen a lot of things. I did look into Florida with my new books. I did a little bit on the skunk ape, as you would, and just on the types of monster imposters that could possibly account for it. And there really are quite a few. I think there was quite a few monkey facilities in there, and several of them were damaged during storms, which led to, I think, several escapes. I think there's a whole population of what are they called now? I'm just looking for it here. Are they rhesus monkeys or something else? Let's have a look. I've got the information here. Okay, that's what happens when you write too much. Okay. So I was just thinking, I don't know what people are going to think of the new book, but I was just thinking, gosh, Andy, get to the point. Where is the information? Okay, so there's several primate facilities in Florida. There's the one in Hendry County Sanctuary, the Center for Great Apes, been in labs and circuses and things in Wachula. Several escapees have happened from there, but I didn't mention it completely, but there's a whole population of monkeys, and I'm sure people were complaining that they had was it chlamydia or something?
Probably.
I don't know. I don't know how they've all got chlamydia, but somehow. It's actually funny. There's in the I don't know if you remember the famous Mayaka skunk ape photo. It looks like an orangutan, and the letter written by the anonymous, a lot of people doubted it was a genuine old lady, but there's so many complaints in here that she's got to be an old lady. And it's almost proof in itself, the way that she talks about things. And
things are still in her apples, right?
Yeah, stealing her apples. And here we go. This is a great bit. I've got the letter here somewhere. Okay. At the very least, this animal belongs to a place like Busch Gardens where it can be looked after properly. Why haven't people been told that an animal this size is loose? How are people to know how dangerous this could be? If I had known an animal like this was loose, I wouldn't have approached it. I saw on the news that monkeys that get loose can carry hepatitis. That's it. They're very dangerous. Please look after this situation. I don't want my backyard to turn into someone else's circus. Now, when you're looking at this report, I really look for character in them, actual character, things that you can't emulate if you don't belong, to that part of society or that age or whatever. That right there, that's something that cannot be copied. Only old people have that kind of gripe.
Right.
Only old people think that way. I don't want my backyard to turn into someone else's circus. Yes. That was the clincher for me. I thought this is genuine. This is 100% genuine. Whatever she's captured, she definitely experienced this thing. And she's pissed about it. Really pissed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He was not happy. Well, let me ask you, what got you into the topic? You said you haven't always been there.
No.
Was there a personal experience that you've had that something you couldn't explain, or?
No. I've actually never ever seen a cryptid, and I've had a few funny experiences in the woods, but I really put that down to a kind of Bigfoot on the brain situation. You know, if you're out in a dark, shadowy wood all by yourself for about 6 or 7 hours at night, you're gonna start playing tricks on you. You know, your mind plays tricks on you. I've never seen anything, but I really love this stuff from when I was very young, a young teenager, I think. I used to say it'd been about 25 years in 2016, but you know, I kind of gathered that was around about 15, maybe younger. I started collecting clippings, and every time there was a documentary, you know, obviously the regular stuff like In Search of and Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World were high up there. But every time there was a new documentary, a new Loch Ness sighting, which you sort of are regularly every year in the UK, I'll collect it, look at it, and started to get interested in other things around the world as well. Ogopogo, I can remember having Arlene Gall's book from quite a young age, you know, and looking at that and thinking, could it be real?
Right.
And even now, I wouldn't say that I'm a believer. I'm quite a big lake monster fan, but I'm not really a believer, less so when you study it, obviously, because you have to ask the questions and deal with all the hoaxes and things. That stuff will burn you out after all. You probably know yourself. That'll, if you've got a little faith in something, that'll definitely burn it up. But yeah, you know, I have questions. I love the possibilities. I always idealize that age of exploration. You know, the whole age of exploration. You know, sounds the colonization, to take that bit out of it,
Right.
the colonialism, then the rest of it was kind of exciting and cool. And yeah, I just think it's not over. There's stuff to discover still, actual, real, bona fide living animals. And when we believe that we've got the world, as you say, mapped, well mapped, it doesn't mean we've stepped there with our feet.
Right.
You know, these days, it doesn't mean that even Amazon jungle explorers, it's so easy to get lost forever in that jungle. People still go on very regular routes. They don't just like pitch up somewhere along the jungle and say, let's go that way.
Right.
Nobody does that. And it's the same look at even like California and Washington. Look at the woods there. There's planes that have gone missing there.
Dozens.
Never been found.
Right.
Jets.
Yeah.
Passenger jets.
Right.
They can't find by air.
Yeah.
And that's not what you would think of as being the most rural and explored part of the world.
Yeah.
Those, I mean, America's a modern country, those other parts of the world, but this, let's say, Anglo-ish, this Anglo-administrative philosophy predominates, which is very handy, actually. It's good for organizing, knowing what's going on everywhere, keeping tabs on stuff. It doesn't exist in those other places.
Right.
People just know there's stuff out there. They don't go there. That's cool. We just leave it. Like those Brazilian tribes they found recently by plane.
Yes.
And they're just there, just there, and they're like, okay, cool. So we know where you are now, and well, look, you know, you're about a couple of 100 miles in. You seem kind of aggressive. We're going to leave you to it.
And you brought up a good point earlier about how you said British people like to kind of stay close to the beaten path.
Very much.
Oh, that's here too, honestly. I mean, we
really?
have some people, you know, that like to go hiking or whatever, but if they're hiking, they're typically hiking an established trail.
Yeah.
You know, we love to hunt, but 90% of hunters stay within a quarter mile of the main road.
There you go.
You know, it's very rare for somebody to go out 3 and 4 miles deep into the wilderness off of any kind of path and stay any length of time, because it's not easy. You know, you got to carry what you need in, carry what you need out. If you're
hunting, you mentioned, there are dangerous
with you, you know,
dangerous predators in there.
Yeah, and it's not like Lewis and Clark anymore. You know?
Yeah, those guys. I mean, exactly. I was reading What's that awesome guy's name? I was reading it. Goodness, now I've forgotten to do completely. What's his name? Oh, my brain is melted. Oh yeah, okay. Who allegedly discovered the Maricoxy anyway? Let's just find this amazing guy. Oh, okay, of course. Colonel Percy Harrison Fawcett. Okay, Colonel Fawcett. And he went into the Amazon looking for the lost city of Z with his son. He was eventually lost looking for this, but he described finding this strange sort of part man, part Neanderthal-like tribe called the Maricoxy when he was in Mato Grosso state in Brazil. And you read something like that, and I think this guy described all kinds of things as well, like a dog with a double barrel nose and everything, and everybody saw this. He's making it on a giant spider, and people, apart from giant snakes and possibly even an Apatosaurus, but people thought this guy is really making stuff up. He's just one of these 19th, early 20th century style explorers that would go off and come back with these wild tales, right? Wow. But later, actually, they have discovered a double-nosed hound. Basically, it's called the Pasha Navarra, the double-nosed Andean tiger hound. So one of the descriptions he made in this book and sketched it, which was sort of sneered at the time, turned out to be completely true.
Yeah.
And it's a strange thing to add on to another list of unlikely creatures and peoples. And I just think, yeah, those guys, they went out there, they risked their lives essentially, and in his case, lost them.
Yeah.
Looking for this new adventure, these new discoveries. I'd love to be I'd love to be one of them. I mean, I would go with some sort of savant of navigation if I did, because that's not really my strong point. But
I think that's part of the appeal, especially for men our age. That sense of adventure.
Yeah,
cryptids give that to us. There's still something out there to be discovered. There's still some reason to explore. I love watching movies about that kind of stuff, about grand adventures and exploration. And I'm constantly reading books about discoveries and treasure hunts and stuff. And we still have that in cryptozoology.
Yeah.
It's just like a beautiful marriage of, what is out there.
The promise is still there. Yeah. And it's a strong promise because they keep finding, like the rock stars of cryptozoology, those guys are still undiscovered, but there's a steady list of frogs and monkeys and apes and even goats and large animals that are discovered every year. And some of them, they found a new whale in California, off the coast of California. I think just last year, the year before. I forget what they've named it now, but it was a new type of whale. It wasn't a small whale.
Right.
It's a new species. That's California.
Right.
Right? This is California. It's not like it wasn't in the middle of the Pacific Ocean when somebody was shipwrecked and just noticed some specialists, in cetaceans said, thank God I was shipwrecked here. Now I noticed this new species. It's in California. People are probably seeing them all the time and just never knew. Hang on a second. This is a completely new type of whale. Look at the okapi and things like that. It's that's the Congo. I mean, the gorilla, the Komodo dragon, they're kind of getting a bit on now. They're getting a bit older, but there's still things out there, and I think that was the main point we made, and that's always my view. People aren't really stepping off the path. Yes, we've surveyed it, we've got it on satellite, but nobody's going there.
Right.
And that's what we need to do. We need to, get lost looking for this city of Z again, and hopefully not eaten along the way. By people or animals.
I tell my wife all the time that Josh Gates, he's he's living my dream. I was
He's
like,
living our dream.
that man
He's got
is-
our job.
yes. I would like to have just a weekend of what he gets to do, you know?
Yeah. My view on that stuff is actually, and this obviously, Josh, if they're listening, this doesn't, and I don't apply this to you, but my view generally on doing anything, getting anything done, is that somewhere out there, somebody stupider than me has my job, my dream job. So just go for it.
Yes.
And that's, just go for it, because that is the case. Somewhere out there, somebody dumber than me has got the job I want. And so you might as well just, pitch in and try and get it.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's right. Josh, don't have to worry about Josh Gates ever hearing this either. So,
well, just in case, we don't mean you. We think, we respect you. But yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, Andy, is there any favorite cases that stand out to you that you wanted to go over in particular?
Yeah, I could have a look at let's have a look at this, a few of these new ones here actually in the new book, because anybody who's heard me before has heard a lot of my Beast of Britain cases. I'm going to look at here actually is, and these aren't my cases, but I did paraphrase some of them in the new book. What I really liked about this, I don't know if you know Marie-Jeanne Kaufman, the famous wildman researcher, French, but also mainly researched in Russia with people like Dmitry Bayanov and Boris Boshnev and Igor Burtsev, who's still around. She recently died at 101, I think, or 102. Wow. Yeah, I mean, just an absolute legend of a lady. And she went to the Caucasus and catalogued and detailed these sightings along with her team that people had of, a wildman-like creature, a Bigfoot-like creature, you could say, but more Neanderthal-like. And she, I just reading through her stuff, and I did report on a few of the sightings she included in the book. I paraphrase them, but just really amazing. This one I really love, and it's 3 almasties that are witnessed in the early 1930s by in the Republic of Kabardino-Balkaria and the Alpine pastures of Elbrus. And there's a shepherd who first reports seeing the creature's called Zagariv Chagir. He's tending his sheep high up in the slopes. It's all sort of mountainous there and very hilly. And he's forced to take refuge under a rocky overhang because of some heavy rain. And he gets under there and sees that there's 3 almasties, these sort of wild men, sheltering under it as well. He's a bit frightened, but he decides he's going to stay there anyway. So the rain's really heavy. So both parties keep their distance from each other, looking, excuse me, looking at each other, but not having any interaction. Rain stops, he comes down from the mountains, and because it's perceived to be bad luck to see an almasty, he doesn't say anything about it. He's keeping mum. And the following morning, he's awoken by the cries of his fellow shepherds who are running down the mountain with a herd, saying there's 3 almasty under the rock up there. So he confesses to one of the elders of the village then that he'd seen the same almasties the previous day, and 15 or more shepherds, curious shepherds, go up and surround the rock and just watch the creatures until like lunchtime.
Wow.
And they described them. As they described, there was there's 3 creatures, medium size, 2 of them, with breasts of women, extremely long and covered with hair over their bodies. The head hair is always differentiated, by the way. And the third, which was a bigger creature, was a male sitting in the middle of them. They're all hunched over with their heads down. I suppose trying to keep a low profile, right? So one of the witnesses, an elder, describes them and says their heads were very ugly, not nice at all. They resembled a human face a little, but the nose is shorter and flattened. The eyes are slanted and reddish. Cheeks are very prominent, like those of a Mongol or a Korean, but more so. Lips are thin. Lower jaw is receding as though cut on a bias. The hair is long like that of a woman and tangled. The entire body is covered with shaggy hair resembling that of the buffalo. In some places, it's long, as on the torso and chest. In other places, it's shorter on the arms and legs. The hair was very dirty, and their smell was so strong we couldn't stand it. Yoda resembled that of wild flax when it grows thickly. I don't know how that smells. Once the one seated on the right mumbled something. I did not see the hands clearly as they were held between their legs. The legs were short and bowed. The feet were like that of men, but more spread out. All were wearing, wrapped around their waist, an old piece of shepherd's cape. And then it goes on to say that they considered capturing them, but one of the elders said it was forbidden, that it was bad luck and to leave them, and they all left them. And she, in her writing, she reports of many, many sightings like this. I mean, really descriptive sightings from locals who know what bears look like and the rest.
Right.
And yet here they are, these people in the middle of nowhere, who've obviously at this time that she was reporting, I think might have been in the 60s even, or maybe later. I'd never even heard of a Bigfoot then. There was no paddy or anything to influence their what they believe they saw. And it's just, her work is just packed full of sightings like that, really, really descriptive, and in many cases some really encouraging and nice interactions between locals, who apparently would give them clothes now and again, or bits of rags and cloths to keep themselves warm.
That's so incredible. And I've never heard this story. I haven't heard. What did you say, Marie Jane Kaufman?
I think it's Mary Jean Kaufman, but it's spelled like Marie Jean Kaufman.
Okay.
I think Kaufman with two N's. Yeah.
No,
it's cool.
American.
I mean,
I'm country accent on top of American accents.
No, well, I'm just trying to. I'm just myself trying not to butcher it, but I'm assuming it's Mary Jean Kaufman, but I don't know actually if that's how it's said. So I may have just butchered it, by the way. So don't feel anything with that. It's those guys, they were really unsung. Dmitry Baranov, I've got one of his books, In the Footsteps of the Russian Snowman, and some of Mary Jean Kaufman's work is in that, as well as stories from another researcher, Boris Porshnev, and others. And while that whole a Yeti thing craze was going on, afterwards these guys in Russia, they were doing some great work, really, really great work, right up until I don't know when she stopped. I think she was even picking tracks out of the earth in the 90s, so clearly like a life dedicated to fantastic research,
a whole lifetime. And speaking of Russia, I'm sure you've seen that viral video of this almasty that's jumping like sideways between trees. Yeah,
I've seen that sort of almost like knuckle walking between I saw
athleticism.
Like 10 years old or something,
something like that. There's an account, Squatch Me Now.
Okay,
he's on Instagram. He's super popular on like TikTok and all that. He has it on there as like one of his top viewed, most believable stories, and it's coming out of Russia.
I mean, I've seen the footage a few times, and I guess I always try to sort of ask myself, if you're going to fake it, how would you fake it?
Right.
How could it be done? If I can't figure out how it could be done, that at least has to be the beginning of credibility in my mind.
Yes.
It doesn't mean it's not fake, but the movement seems very difficult for a human to replicate, unless that was actually a huge chimp, a huge male chimp that was kept and owned by somebody that they filmed running across it. That's a possibility, but the fact that it probably is a real animal seems quite likely.
Yeah, I think so.
There's I don't know if you obviously remember the Todd Standing stuff.
Oh yeah.
And when the Discovering Bigfoot movie came out, I went on and did a little thing about it. So first of all, a little post on Facebook saying, yes, this has got to be it, and everything. some really trusted colleagues just sort of rinsed me out. And I remember thinking, why would they do that? Why would they do that? It's kind of strange. And my wife at the time mentioned, well, hey, my friend, from back home, who I know really well now as well, she was the head of VFX for The Hobbit and Happy Feet and Lord of the Rings and all these different movies, Why don't you ask her what she thinks about it? Because she's got no interest in this subject at all. At least she give you a sort of a rundown of it as to whether it could be done or how easy it would be. And she looked at it, all of them, Teddy Squatch, Blinky, the devil face awful thing from the documentary, when everybody's gone home and the battery runs out. And she said, at least for the first two, that look convincingly like faces of some kind, close up, clear faces, that they could be done with 2D layering, with a sort of a mannequin head for the Teddy Squatch, not the blinky one, but the beige colored one. Since there's not a lot of movement, you could 2D layer the plants and things over afterwards. But she did say that if they are models or if it is makeup, especially for Blinky, that the prosthetic makeup has gone right under the eyelids. They would have to be wearing absolutely full eyeball contact lenses, which would be incredibly painful, as well as the glue on the makeup under the eyelid for the hair and everything. Not that it couldn't be done that way, but that whoever did it, if it is fake, did very good work. Very good work.
Yeah.
And I wondered when I was looking at it afterwards, when 10 years after that footage, almost 10 years, when that Discovering Bigfoot documentary came out, the only thing he could put as a face was the devil scratch, which really just looked like a man in blacked up makeup, right?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, I mean, it's the worst case of blackface I've ever seen, and that includes Trudeau, right? And I mean, if that's not a candidate, that is. So it was just really suspect. So I'm looking at it and thinking, something has happened between this initial point where you had some great, if it's fake, where you had some great makeup artists on board to do this work, to this point 10 years later, where obviously any money you'd have would have run out. Finally, now you've got your documentary, you've got to stick something dynamite in there as well to say, well, since that time, look what we've got. Apart from the presence of Meldrum, obviously, and those great guys at Bindernagle.
Oh yeah.
What could it be? And I'm still stuck. I'm still stuck with that guy.
Yeah, I am too. I know he's got a lot of controversy. A lot of people want to just, if it's got Todd Stanley's name on it, they want to throw it away. But I'm reluctant to do that.
It's hard.
It's really hard. And that's because it is so hard to go out in these remote areas. It's so hard to create something that's even remotely realistic.
Yeah.
What would he have to gain when he would be spending thousands and thousands of dollars to go do this stuff?
It's hard to know, unless the tours are the case, because I know he gives tours and he gets paid for that and little squatches. But actually, in the US, so many researchers do that anyway. Squatch walks and things like that. And, it's not a high-paid profession. If they're dedicating their lives to it 100%, let them make some money.
Yeah, really.
Don't deny them. Don't deny them food on the table,
Right.
Because it's not, I don't know what everybody thinks is cryptozoology is not like cryptocurrency. It's not, there's many adverts that I probably get for that with the crypto thing. But yeah, so I mean, at one point some of the early stuff was real. He faked the later stuff. That's where I was. Okay, that was real. That's, I'm not sure about that one, but the beigey one in the between that doesn't move much. Well, it does look cool. And then the later stuff, that devil thing, well, you just needed a clincher for the end of the doc. That was my view, but I don't know. I spoke to I did a conference, and I don't know him well, but he was at a conference that we were at. We all went for dinner later, and I sat next to Jeff Meldrum, and I was just asking him about it. I said, obviously, if everybody asks you about this, because you did that documentary, do you mind talking about it? And he was under the impression, actually, that he wasn't supporting Todd's work. But he went out. He was a good outdoorsman. He knew his stuff. His wife wasn't a makeup artist. She was just like a beautician or something.
Oh, wow.
So that's one of the rumors that was
Yeah.
put to bed. And said, he's a nice guy and a genuine guy, but he's not very likable. And maybe that's half of his problem.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't come across as likable.
Yeah.
People sort of almost, you know, some people have got that, right?
Yeah.
So people have got that. And no matter what you do, you know, you're just going to come across as a bit sort of shifty.
Yeah, I've heard that about him too. He was on
Yeah.
Sasquatch Chronicles,
Okay.
Wes Garmer show.
Yeah, it's a great show.
And you can hear that personality kind of come out. It's like he's a little
confident.
Yeah, a little rough around the edges, you know. It's one thing to be confident and be like, you know, it's okay if you don't believe me. I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's one thing. It's another to be like, oh, if you don't believe me, you're an idiot. You know what I mean? It's like, come on, back off just a little bit.
Well, if you've got evidence, I mean, I'm not a big Attenborough fan, right, by the way, but when did Attenborough rock up and say, well, either you like what, you know, you believe what we've just shown you, or you're a complete fool?
Right.
That's not his closer at the end of it. So it's, for everybody out there, by the way, you're all fools if you don't believe this. It's I wonder if this thing comes from sometimes when you've been attacked by so many different people. Sometimes,
yeah,
it's not unusual to seem defensive all the time. But the only thing that the first listener gets from that, it's not the whole background about how you were attacked for 10 years. They just get that you're really defensive and overconfident.
Right.
So they just see the product of it, and that's all they got to judge on.
Yeah.
And that's a difficult thing. I even factored that in. Is that it? Is that it? You've just been called a liar for 10 years. Your back's gonna be up a bit. Sure it is.
Of course, yeah.
Everybody in the community has kind of said, no, not you. Don't want you.
Right.
So
and there's the possibility that he had some genuine things happen initially, and he's just so eager to convince you that he'll throw a reenactment in there, you know,
maybe
and get busted with a little hoax. And it's human nature, you know.
It is. And at the end of the day, when these things are making money, these big production companies, they're throwing something your way, making you a documentary. They want something.
Yeah.
They gotta pull something out.
Yeah.
You know, whether that's, you know, listening for knocks in the woods and looking terribly shocked and surprised all the time, or what, you know, whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah. I'm really adverse to it. I want that adventure show. I want that out in the wilds of Papua New Guinea somewhere, you know, searching for pterodactyls and shit. But I just,
me too. That's what I want.
You know, running away from, you know, angry tribes whose customs have accidentally stepped all over, which will happen. I'm over friendly, and I'm bound to shake the wrong hand or you know, give 2 kisses to the chief's daughter, 1 on each cheek, continental style, and get myself, you know,
get a headhunter after you.
Something, just some angry people, because people the world over, you know, if you step on their traditions, sometimes they don't know enough about the world outside to expect you not to know.
Yeah, you have a little bit of a culture shock when you get out there.
Yeah, I've done it before.
I have too.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of documentaries, there's a couple that I'm looking really forward to coming out this year. One is going to be called Masters of the Hunt. So that's something to look for. I'm not sure exactly what platform it's going to come out on, whether it's Amazon or what. But again, that's with Trey from Squash Me Now. He's going to be doing that.
Cool.
And there's another one. I don't know how you feel about the paranormal or the woo factor of things.
Yeah.
But if you're into the paranormal and that kind of stuff, there's one called Dark Holler that's going to be coming out. Super good shows. I've talked to the guys that are behind all of it, you know, and those I highly anticipate. The way they go about things on Masters of the Hunt. They're looking for Bigfoot. Just, you know, that's their goal, and their approach, the way they describe things, it's things that I've never heard being tried before. So I'm super excited about it, even if they get
looking
nothing.
forward to that then.
Even if they get nothing, I'm excited about how they're going to go about doing this. So,
well, that sounds. I mean, on the paranormal side, I'm not that interested in it because it's essentially, prospective zoology is that's my passion.
yeah.
But still, I love finding out new things and any new methods. I'm looking for any new methods to steal.
Yeah.
That's good. So I'll be watching the Masters of the Hunt with eager interest to see what I can credit them for when I include it in my next expedition.
So, before we wrap things up, if you don't mind, tell me about whatever you do have coming up. Any kind of books, any kind of works, expeditions that you got?
Well, I've got Beasts of Britain, the Beasts of Britain book. The audiobook has just come out. So for all of those, and I'm not narrating it, by the way. So if you do listen to it, listen in an English accent, but an understandable one, clear and cadence. So this guy, he does a really good job. So if you commute, you travel, you like to read on the go, and not sat down in the corner, then that's a great one. It's about 8 hours 15 minutes.
Nice.
I think the book's about 355 pages, so that's that. Then Beast of the World, Part 1, Volume 1 of the 7-part series will be out hopefully by the end of the month, and that's called Hairy Humanoids. And I've spoken about a few of the cases in there tonight, and basically looking at the different types of, and I call them humanoids because some of them are not quite ape-like or not really classifiable, but look at different types of these hairy humanoids, like the big giant man apes like Bigfoot, or the wildman types like the Almasti that we just described, or the Barmano, or the Woodwells. And then other things like relic apes like the Yeti, like the skunk ape, and more besides, Littlefoots, monkey monsters, dogmen, amphibious anthropoids, which is a bit more ambiguous, like that last section, but covering these different types of creatures that we are sometimes lump into this one Bigfoot category, but actually could be physiologically quite different to one another. So that's the book. That's Volume 1 of Beast of the World, and I'm already hooked in now to writing Volume 2, which I won't tell people what that's about yet. It won't be about hairy humanoids, but it's within the 7 volumes we want to go into every cryptozoological arena in the world and flesh it out, hopefully in as logical way as possible.
That's so exciting.
With some personal opinion chucked in there for good measure.
Well, I will clear off. Well, I'll probably need to buy a new bookshelf anyway, so I'll make sure I save some space for
thank you.
Beasts of the World. I want to get all 7 volumes there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
And am I mistaken, or do you not have a podcast?
I do. It's like a pretend podcast. It's called Beastly Theories, and on the Beast, stay with the Beast call sign there. For Beastly Theories, I describe it as it's a low-tech, low-key, low-brow endeavor to discuss the highs and lows of cryptozoology research, and it's basically an exercise in nepotism. I just call people up I'm really interested in chatting to, whether people are or not interested in listening to them, and in the lowest tech way possible, just with my computer and a set of headphones and no intros or anything. I just chat, I just waffle at them for about 2 hours, and we just chat. And there's about, the moment, I don't do lots of regular episodes, there's 59 episodes on there at the moment.
Nice.
Covering all different types of things, and people like Cliff and Jeff and Lyle Blackburn and others on there. Their interviews are on it, but also people you might not have heard of before, like Colin Keelty, who had some strange werewolf experiences in the north of England, and this great guys got a group called Irish Aquatic Monsters, who basically look into the whole history and newspaper clippings and stories of Nessie type creatures being sighted all around the island. I think they've also got several books, but one great one called The Seal Serpent Theory, which was a great read. Now obviously it's quite obvious what they're implying by the title, but yeah, it was very interesting. And other things besides, like my good friend Scott Modis, who passed away this year, the Lake Champlain researcher, Scott Modis. We've got quite a few interviews with him, talking about his great Zeomaro carcass theories, and yeah, just more and more and more besides. And I will be booking in several more people in the year to come. Some interesting chaps, yeah.
Awesome.
And chapesses.
Well, I got one more question for you, and then I'll let you off here for the evening.
I'll try and make it short this time, I promise.
No, you're good. And this is the most subjective question of all. What is your theory about Bigfoot? I know you've mentioned Neanderthal, possibly.
Yeah.
What is your take on Bigfoot?
I really think, and this is inclusive of the mainly ape-like types that are described in my new book, I believe that they're all some form of higher apes that we haven't classified. Even though I mentioned the Neanderthal theory in the book for things like wild men, it doesn't really match. I mean, Neanderthals, as far as we know, were probably no less developed mentally than Homo sapiens. And I think really probably if you saw one in the modern day all suited up and a nice shaven haircut, it wouldn't look any different to any other London commuter, that would greet you or barge you down the escalator on your journey into the big smoke. So yeah, I think that nearly all of them are some form of higher apes, apart from the monkey-like monsters that are most likely, and possibly the drugmen too, some form of extant giant monkey that still exists in some lost places in the world, and maybe in countries like our own is functionally extinct.
Yeah. Fantastic. I'll take that.
I'll take that. Answer long.
Because I have no clue, I thought that it used to be, I used to think that it was a relative of Gigantopithecus, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah.
But who knows? I hear so many stories. I've done almost 100 episodes now, and close to half of them are Bigfoot related. I just get more confused as we go, so I just figure I would ask.
Well, there's a point to it, and I think the point that you're discovering, without jumping back in too deeply, is that it's a little bit matter of faith for some people, and it has formed something of a religion with people, which is why they get so fierce when that theory is crossed or doubted in some way, because even when it's based upon a scientific point of view, it still sort of creates a philosophy that the person follows, or at least there's a philosophy behind it, even if it's just, I believe they evolved from Gigantopithecus. You can turn around and say, well, look, all we've got really is jaw bones and a few teeth,
right?
Mandibles and a few teeth, and that does not make an 8 foot tall, humanoid, hairy humanoid.
No, it does not.
With a flexible midfoot, there's no evidence of that. We're just reaching at straws into the past and say, well, there is something there that's kind of like this, and so why don't we just pull that in? And I think anthropologists are very quick to point that out. Just because there was a Gigantopithecus doesn't mean you've got a relative there in the fossil tree.
You're right.
Yeah.
And I've thoroughly enjoyed this.
Yes.
Again, I apologize. I'm under the weather, man.
No, I hope you get better soon. I do.
I appreciate that. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to hit on before we retire for the evening?
No, just that I appreciate the patience of everybody, and anybody who's had to sort of muddle through the accent a little for the first few minutes. Well done for sticking with it. It does get clearer as the hour goes on.
Oh no, you're great. You're great. If they can understand my accent day to day, then
that's easy peasy.
Yours is a relief to hear, I'm sure.
Cool. Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming on. I know we had a time difference thing, and you worked with me. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you.
All right. You have a good night.
You too.